So here we are. I finally get my chance. I finally get what I have been begging for like 3 years. I finally get my chance to race Chief.
They lived their lives a quarter mile at a time, but off the screen, their stories were even more intense. For over a decade, Street Outlaws turned underground racing legends into household names. But where are those stars today? Some are thriving, some are struggling, and others have tragically disappeared from the spotlight altogether. This is the untold story of the Street Outlaws cast and where they are now. When Street Outlaws first premiered in 2013, no one could have predicted the impact it would have. A show that started with raw footage of Oklahoma City's underground racers soon exploded into one of Discovery Channel's biggest hits. It wasn't just about cars, it was about community, rivalries, triumphs, and tragedies. The stars of the show, from Big Chief to Murder Nova, Daddy Dave, and others, became icons in the racing world. They weren't polished Hollywood celebrities. They were real racers with grease under their fingernails, living for the thrill of speed and the brotherhood of the street. But reality TV is never just what it seems. Behind the adrenaline and the late-night races were personal struggles, controversies, and life-altering events.
Cast member of Street Outlaws, that's a Discovery TV show, has died while filming in Las Vegas.
Some drivers turned their fame into lasting success, while others faced setbacks that nearly ended their racing careers. So, where are the stars of Street Outlaws today? Let's dive into their stories, one by one, to uncover the truth. Big Chief. No name is more synonymous with Street Outlaws than Justin Shearer, better known as Big Chief. From the very first episode, Big Chief became the face of the show, the leader of Oklahoma City's list, and the man who seemed born for the role of Outlaw King. His rise was meteoric. Fans loved his charisma, his leadership, and his fearless driving. But Big Chief's journey wasn't without turbulence. The show brought fame, money, and opportunities, but also immense pressure. Maintaining his position as the boss of the OKC list meant constant battles, both on the street and behind the scenes. Over time, personal struggles began to weigh heavily on him. Rumors of disputes with fellow cast members, his complicated divorce, and the strain of non-stop filming created a storm around him. By the mid-2020s, Big Chief had stepped back from the spotlight, no longer the central figure of the show. Today, Chief continues to race and remains active in the community, but he's no longer the towering figure who once ruled the list. For fans, his absence from recent episodes leaves one haunting question: can Street Outlaws ever truly be the same without Big Chief at its core? Murder Nova. Sean Ellington, better known as Murder Nova, was Big Chief's partner in crime, a quiet but deadly racer whose jet black Nova became one of the most feared cars on the list. His nickname wasn't just for show. Murder Nova embodied the outlaw spirit, always ready to risk it all for a win. But fame brought challenges. Balancing his racing career with personal responsibilities wasn't easy. Over the years, Sean faced setbacks with his car, financial struggles, and even burnout from the relentless grind of racing and filming. At one point, his passion for the sport seemed to waver, leading fans to wonder if Murder Nova's time had passed. Yet resilience defined his story. With the support of family and close friends, Sean rebuilt both his car and his spirit. In later seasons, he made a triumphant return to the spotlight, proving that while cars may break down, true racers never quit. Today, Murder Nova continues to race, build, and inspire. His comeback is a reminder that even when life pushes you to the sidelines, there's always a way back to the starting line. But not every Street Outlaws star found the same redemption. Some faced tragedies that changed their lives forever. Daddy Dave. If there's one racer whose name is etched into the very DNA of Street Outlaws, it's Daddy Dave, or Dave Comstock. Known for his precision driving and fierce competitiveness, Dave wasn't just another racer. He was a man willing to push his limits every time he got behind the wheel. But that drive nearly cost him everything. In 2015, during a no-prep race in Amarillo, Texas, Daddy Dave's car, nicknamed Goliath, flipped multiple times at over 100 miles per hour. The wreck was brutal. Fans who witnessed it feared the worst. For a terrifying moment, it looked like the legend of Daddy Dave had come to a tragic end. Miraculously, Dave survived, but the road back was grueling. With serious injuries and a wrecked car, many racers would have walked away for good, but not Dave. True to his nickname, he rebuilt, both himself and his machines. With the support of sponsors and fans, he returned to the track, determined to prove that nothing, not even near death, could keep him down. Today, Daddy Dave is still one of the most respected names in the sport. He continues to race with intensity, reminding everyone that resilience isn't about avoiding failure. It's about what you do after the crash. His story remains one of the most inspiring arcs in Street Outlaws history. But not all racers' challenges came from violent crashes. For some, the toughest battles were about the cost of staying in the game. Monza. Jerry Johnston, better known as Monza, became a fan favorite thanks to his calm, steady presence and his iconic Camaro, sinister split bumper. Monza wasn't flashy. He wasn't the loudest personality, but when he lined up at the start, everyone knew he was a serious threat. What fans didn't always see, however, was the toll the racing life took. Racing at the outlaw level is expensive. Constant repairs, new parts, and travel costs piled up. For Monza, keeping up with younger racers and their increasingly high-tech builds meant sacrificing time, money, and energy. At one point, Monza admitted he wasn't sure how much longer he could keep going. Not because he lacked the passion, but because of the strain it put on his life off the track. Then there was Joe Woods, known as Dominator. Big, intimidating, and unapologetic, Dominator brought grit to the show. Unlike some racers with big money sponsors, Joe prided himself on doing things the hard way, building his car piece by piece, often with his own two hands. Fans loved his underdog spirit, but the financial strain was immense. Dominator once spoke about maxing out credit cards just to stay competitive. For him, racing wasn't just a sport. It was survival. Both Monza and Dominator represent the other side of Street Outlaws, the stars who may not always grab headlines, but who embody the sacrifice and determination that keeps the sport alive. Their stories are less about fame and more about the raw cost of chasing passion. But as grueling as the financial battle was for some, others faced tragedies that money could never fix, losses that shook the Street Outlaws community to its core. For all the adrenaline and thrill that Street Outlaws brings to fans, the reality of street racing is dangerous and, at times, devastating. The Street Outlaws family has endured more than its share of tragedy, reminding everyone that behind the roaring engines are real lives at stake. One of the most heartbreaking losses was the death of Flip, or Tyler Pretty, who was one of the original OKC crew members. Though his passing occurred before the show gained mainstream traction, his presence loomed large in the memories of fans and cast alike. Big Chief and others often spoke of Flip with reverence, describing him as the brother who inspired them to push harder. His absence left a hole in the racing family, a reminder that even legends aren't invincible. Years later, another tragedy hit when Ryan Fellows, a racer featured in Street Outlaws, Fastest in America, lost his life during a race in 2022. The crash was violent, sudden, and shocking. Fans around the world mourned, and the Street Outlaws cast came together in grief, paying tribute to their fallen friend. Ryan's passing highlighted the razor-thin line between glory and danger, reinforcing the brutal truth. Every race carries the risk of never making it home. These losses rattled the community. Some fans even questioned whether the show should continue, worried that it was pushing racers too far for entertainment. But for the stars, racing wasn't just a TV gig, it was their life, their passion, and in some ways, their family legacy. The tragedies of Flip and Ryan Fellows left scars, but they also strengthened the bond among the racers. For them, every race became not just about victory, but about honoring the ones they lost along the way. And while tragedy brought moments of deep sorrow, there were also figures in the Street Outlaws family who managed to bring laughter, levity, and pure joy to fans, like Farm Truck and AZN. Farm Truck and AZN. From the very beginning, Sean, Farm Truck, Whitley, and Jeff, AZN Bonnet, stood out. While Big Chief and Murder Nova battled for dominance, Farm Truck and AZN carved their niche as the duo who brought humor, creativity, and wild unpredictability to Street Outlaws. At first glance, Farm Truck's old beat-up Chevy C10 didn't look like it belonged in the same league as the polished Novas and Mustangs. But that was the magic. The truck, with its rusted body and sleeper build, became iconic. Fans loved the underdog energy. The idea that this old farm truck could line up against flashy, expensive builds and still hold its own. AZN, with his quick wit and mischievous energy, complemented Farm Truck perfectly. Together, they were more than just racers. They were entertainers. Whether they were pranking other racers, building crazy side projects, or just bantering with each other, Farm Truck and AZN added a layer of heart and humor that balanced the show's intensity. But make no mistake, behind the comedy was real skill. Farm Truck's C10 was constantly evolving, packed with power that surprised anyone who underestimated it. And Azerbaijani Manat, though often seen as the sidekick, was a capable driver and builder in his own right. Together, they embodied the spirit of Street Outlaws. It wasn't always about money or flash. It was about creativity, grit, and love for the game. Today, Farm Truck and AZN have expanded their brand far beyond the show. They've hosted spin-offs, launched merchandise, and continued building some of the craziest, most entertaining rides in the game. For many fans, they're the heart of Street Outlaws. Proof that racing isn't just about winning lists, but about sharing the culture with the world. But as some used humor and creativity to cement their legacies, others turned controversy into a storm that threatened to overshadow their careers. Street Outlaws was never just about cars. At its core, it was about ego, pride, and the fierce rivalries that kept fans glued to their screens. And with rivalries came controversies, some staged for TV, others all too real. From the very first seasons, the Oklahoma City list was more than a ranking of fast cars. It was a hierarchy of respect. Being in the top 10 meant everything, and being knocked off the list was a humiliation no racer wanted to endure. This system fueled countless rivalries. Big Chief and Murder Nova often faced off against rivals from Texas, California, and beyond. Every race felt like a battle for not just bragging rights, but for identity. But rivalries also spilled over into real-life drama. Behind the scenes, accusations of favoritism, staged races, and unfair rules caused tension among cast members. Some racers accused the producers of manipulating outcomes for ratings, while others claimed Big Chief's role as list boss gave him too much power. These conflicts boiled over into heated arguments, some of which made it onto the screen, others that played out in garages and parking lots after the cameras stopped rolling. Then came the legal controversies. Street racing has always walked a fine line between outlaw culture and law enforcement. While the show tried to control the environment with permits and safety measures, critics argued that Street Outlaws glamorized illegal street racing and encouraged dangerous copycats. Several cast members were ticketed or arrested in their personal lives for racing-related incidents, adding fuel to the fire. But perhaps the most gripping controversies came from within the cast itself. Feuds erupted between once close friends. Partnerships dissolved under the strain of fame and money. Social media became a battlefield where racers and fans alike hurled accusations. For many, these feuds were just entertainment. But for the racers, the tension was real, often threatening to fracture the community they had built. And yet, despite the drama, rivalries were also the lifeblood of the show. Without them, there would be no stakes, no fire, no reason for audiences to tune in week after week. As one racer put it, "If we're not fighting to be number one, then what's the point of racing at all?" But as rivalries grew, so did the show's reach. What started as an Oklahoma phenomenon soon became a national movement. When Street Outlaws premiered in 2013, it was about a single city's list, Oklahoma City. But success has a way of expanding boundaries. As the show grew in popularity, it was only a matter of time before the Outlaws took their skills and their egos nationwide. The first major expansion came with the Cash Days events, where racers from all over the country gathered for high-stakes shootouts. Suddenly, OKC wasn't just competing with itself. They were facing heavy hitters from Texas, California, New Orleans, and beyond. These events gave fans a taste of the broader outlaw culture and proved that fast cars existed far beyond Oklahoma's borders. From there, spin-offs exploded. Street Outlaws. New Orleans brought in stars like Kai Kelly and Lizzie Musey, expanding the roster of fan favorites. Street Outlaws. Memphis, led by the larger-than-life J.J. Dawboss, introduced a whole new style of racing and family-driven loyalty. Each spin-off added fresh blood, new rivalries, and unique perspectives on what it meant to be an outlaw racer. With each expansion, the stakes grew higher. Races went from back roads and industrial lots to massive no-prep events held in stadiums with thousands of fans. The culture of underground racing had gone mainstream, with television cameras, sponsorships, and big money on the line. But success came with its own price. As the show expanded, some longtime fans accused it of losing touch with its roots. What began as raw, gritty street racing now looked polished, commercialized, and overproduced. For purists, the heart of the outlaw spirit, the secrecy, the danger, the authenticity, was slipping away. Still, for most fans, the nationwide growth was thrilling. Watching racers from different cities clash brought new energy to the franchise and cemented Street Outlaws as one of Discovery Channel's flagship shows. But as the franchise expanded and the spotlight grew brighter, so did the pressure on its stars. And for some, the cost of fame was almost too much to bear. When Street Outlaws first aired, many of the racers were just regular people with regular lives. They worked day jobs, raised families, and spent their nights and weekends wrenching on cars. Fame wasn't part of the equation. But after a few seasons, everything changed. Overnight, these men and women became reality TV stars. And with fame came fortune. And strain. For some, the money was life-changing. Appearances, sponsorships, and merchandise sales poured in. Racers who once scraped by to keep their cars running were suddenly able to afford bigger builds, faster parts, and better equipment. The underground racers who once had to beg, borrow, and trade for parts were now being flown across the country, paid to show up and race in front of massive crowds. But fame is a double-edged sword. What the cameras didn't always capture was the toll this new lifestyle took on families. Long stretches of filming meant racers were away from home for weeks, sometimes months at a time. Birthdays were missed. Holidays came and went with empty seats at the dinner table. Wives and children who had once cheered from the sidelines now felt the sting of absence. For some stars, marriages crumbled under the pressure. the strain of constant travel, financial stress despite new income, and the scrutiny of being in the public eye created cracks that widened with every season. Fans speculated endlessly about personal relationships, fueling gossip that often made private struggles even more painful. Others struggled with the identity shift. Before the show, they were mechanics, fathers, friends. Now, they were celebrities expected to always be on strangers, approach them in grocery stores. Fans followed them at gas stations, and critics judged them not just for how they raced, but for how they lived. For men who had built their identities around the outlaw spirit of doing things in secret, the sudden glare of fame felt suffocating. And yet, for many, it was a price worth paying. They had dreamed of making a living doing what they loved. Now they were, but the sacrifice was steep. Which leads to a bigger question. If the old guard of Street Outlaws is paying this price, who will carry the torch into the next generation? As the years rolled on, one thing became clear. Street Outlaws couldn't rely on the same faces forever. Cars age, racers burn out, and audiences crave something new. That's when the new generation of outlaw racers began to rise. Younger drivers, inspired by watching Big Chief, Murder Nova, and Daddy Dave on TV, started showing up with their own machines. Lighter, faster, more technologically advanced. They weren't just racing for bragging rights, they were racing with the dream of becoming the next breakout star of the franchise. In cities across America, spin-offs highlighted these fresh faces. From Memphis to New Orleans, new names emerged. Drivers like Kai Kelly, Lizzie Musey, and J.J. Dawboss's entire crew of family racers. They brought a different kind of energy. Where the original Oklahoma racers had built their reputation on secrecy and grit, the new wave leaned into spectacle. Bright paint jobs, high-tech setups, and bigger-than-life personalities became the new norm. Fans were divided. Some embraced the new blood, excited to watch the sport evolve. Others longed for the gritty authenticity of the early seasons, when cars looked rough, racers were broke, and every win felt like survival. The tension between old school and new school became a storyline in itself, with OG racers sometimes clashing against the younger generation. Yet, despite the debates, one fact was undeniable. Street Outlaws had become bigger than any one city, any one racer, or any one car. It was now a culture, a brand, and a movement. The new generation was proof that the outlaw spirit wasn't dying. It was evolving, but evolution brings new challenges. As technology and fame push the sport forward, the question remains: can the heart of street racing, raw passion, brotherhood, and risk survive in an era where everything is televised, sponsored, and commercialized? A decade after Street Outlaws first roared onto TV screens, its legacy is undeniable. What started as a gritty docu-style show about underground Oklahoma racers has become a global brand. The cast members, once just friends wrenching on cars in dimly lit garages, are now household names. And yet, the legacy of Street Outlaws isn't simple. For the original stars like Big Chief, Murder Nova, and Daddy Dave, the show was both a blessing and a curse. It gave them fame, opportunities, and a chance to live out their dreams. But it also put them under immense pressure, exposed their personal lives to the public, and forced them to constantly chase bigger and better wins. Fans still debate whether Big Chief's absence in recent years signals the end of an era, or whether the show can survive without its most iconic leader. For supporting cast members like Monza, Dominator, Farm Truck, and AZN, the show provided a platform to showcase their unique contributions to racing culture. Some thrived, turning their quirky personalities into thriving brands. Others struggled to keep pace, financially or emotionally, With the demands of reality TV, their stories highlight the duality of the Street Outlaws experience. You can be celebrated one moment and overlooked the next. For the newer generation, racers like Kai Kelly, Lizzie Musey, and the Memphis crew led by JJ Da Boss, Street Outlaws has become more than a show. It's a launching pad for their own legacies. They've brought fresh storylines, dramatic rivalries, and new fans into the fold. But even their success raises questions. Will they honor the outlaw roots, or will the commercialization of the brand strip away the grit that made it special in the first place? And then, of course, there are the tragedies. The losses of Flip and Ryan Fellows will always loom over the franchise. Their deaths are sobering reminders of the risks these racers take every time they line up at the start. Fans mourn, racers grieve, and yet the engines continue to roar. For the Street Outlaws family, the only way to honor the fallen is to keep racing, to keep pushing, to keep living the life they chose. Today, Street Outlaws is more than a television series. It's a symbol of American car culture. It's about speed, rivalry, loyalty, and sacrifice. But it's also about the unanswered questions. How long can the franchise survive in an ever-changing TV landscape? Will the OGs return for one last run, or has their time truly passed? And most importantly, when the cameras stop rolling, what happens to the racers who gave everything for the streets? The story of Street Outlaws isn't just about fast cars. It's about people, their struggles, their triumphs, their losses, and their relentless drive to keep moving forward no matter the cost. For Big Chief, Murder Nova, Daddy Dave, and the rest, the roads they've traveled haven't always been smooth. There have been crashes, controversies, heartbreaks, and tragedies. Yet through it all, they've shown the resilience that defines what it means to be an outlaw. For fans, Street Outlaws has been more than entertainment. It's been a glimpse into a hidden world, a culture built on brotherhood and adrenaline. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful stories aren't told on polished racetracks, but on dark back roads lit only by headlights. And as the show moves forward, one thing is certain: the legacy of Street Outlaws will live on, not just in the cars they built or the races they won, but in the way they inspired countless others to chase their own passions, no matter the odds. So, what do you think? Can Street Outlaws survive without its original stars, or is the golden era behind us? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the untold stories behind your favorite shows. Because in the end, Street Outlaws isn't just about who crosses the finish line first. It's about the race itself and the people brave enough to run it.